right, welcome to The Hill on NewsNation. I'm Anna Koyman filling in for Blake Berman. And tonight, another development in the legal battle between Harvard and President Trump as a federal judge blocks the ban on allowing foreign students into the Ivy League university. Plus, more questions are being raised about who was really in charge while Joe Biden was president, what one former staffer is saying about Jill Biden and her role there. And RFK Jr. pushes forward with his MAHA agenda. This, as Republicans in states across the country are introducing bills to ban synthetic food dyes and bring healthier options into public schools. And back here in Washington, the White House reacting after a federal court blocked Trump's sweeping tariffs.
The courts should have no role here. America cannot function if President Trump, or any other president for that matter, has their sensitive diplomatic or trade negotiations railroaded by activist judges.
Why the administration is saying the Supreme Court will need to get involved. Late this afternoon, a federal appeals court temporarily paused the lower court ruling blocking the tariffs. So we begin tonight with Kelly Meyer, who is live for us at the White House with the very latest reaction to this ruling and how it will impact trade negotiations. Good evening, Kelly.
Hey there, Anna. So no shortage of reaction here. It's exactly where the White House started their briefing today that we were in. The Court of Appeals put it on hold until it makes a ruling. Today, a second federal judge blocked Trump's tariff, and that's still in effect for now. So it's all causing a lot of confusion. I asked the top trade advisor here at the White House, Peter Navarro, what the conversations look like now with other countries.
This morning, we were getting plenty of phone calls from countries saying, we saw the ruling, so what? We're going to continue to negotiate in good faith. By the way, there's going to be, within the next, I don't know, say a few days, because that puts me too much on the spot, but you will see a cascade of new deals coming out in the near future.
A cascade of new deals, he says. Today in the briefing, Caroline Leavitt slamming this all as judicial overreach, she said. And the president has core foreign powers or affairs powers to protect the U.S. economy, she says. The courts believe this is overreach. And I was talking with our Jesse Weber about this, and he says there is a possibility it could go all the way to the Supreme Court, Anna.
You got it. All right. Kelly Meyer, live for us at the White House. Thank you so much. Well, joining us now on the Hill tonight is the Oregon Attorney General, Dan Rayfield. He is leading the multi-state lawsuit against President Trump's tariffs. And Dan Rayfield joins us now. Hey there. Good evening. Great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
All right. So Kelly said it, no shortage of reaction. So what's yours to the appeals court temporarily pausing the lower court's ruling that blocked the tariffs? Is this going to go all the way to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, first thing to note for everybody, you've had 4 judges in the United States that have ruled that the president has misused his emergency powers. And one of these judges was even appointed by Trump. So to talk about the presidential, overreach is really the pinpoint here. And the merits are just as good as now as when we filed the case. And the reality to this is a stay is just that. It periodically pauses given action so that the appellate court can consider the merits of the case. This isn't a ruling on the merits. So this isn't a victory for the President Trump, but they should be incredibly concerned that you have 4 judges ruling exactly the same.
Well, in preparing for tonight's interview, I watched you the last time you were on the Hill. I want to play a bit of sound from when you were here then, along with a bit more from the White House press secretary. Let's roll the tape.
It doesn't matter whether you're the president of the United States. It doesn't matter whether you are just a member of the community. You do have to follow the laws in our country.
These judges failed to acknowledge that the President of the United States has core foreign affairs powers and authority given to him by Congress to protect the United States economy and national security.
So Caroline Leavitt says the judges have gone rogue. Who's right here?
Well, this is fascinating to me. And it's almost that the press secretary and the President Trump himself have forgotten what they learned in grade school. And when you go back to the Constitution, and we all agree that's what should control here, the Constitution gives Congress the power to set tariffs. That isn't an inherent presidential power. Congress has delegated some authority to the president under Title 19. That's not the law the president used. Every single president has used Title 19 laws. He used an emergency power. No president has ever used that power, and that's why he got struck down, and he's going to get struck down again. And the reason he wants to do that is because he wants to skirt the sideboards, the safeguards for our economy that Congress put in place. He doesn't want to do those. Those have limits on terms. Those have limits on the period in which that these tariffs can get administered. So he's trying to do this in a backwards way and find a loophole. And the judges said no.
Well, the three panel judges, the three panel of judges, my producers dug in to see, who appointed these judges. And one was Obama, one was Reagan, and one was Trump himself. But I want to get on to this. Consumers who are watching tonight, it's a lot of whiplash. It's a lot of back and forth. What does this mean for consumers in your state of Oregon and others as well?
This is the most important question that people should be focused on. This is $3,800 that would have been an increase to average households every year. This is expenses to businesses that won't go through if this court decision is upheld. In last week or 2 weeks ago, we had a decrease in revenue in the state, $700+ million in Oregon. That means less money for schools. And that decrease was tied to the uncertainty in tariffs. As costs of goods go up for a given state, again, that's less money we spend on schools, less money we spend on healthcare. This impacts us all. And even Trump's own studies show that these tariffs pass down to us, and they are a hidden tax disguised as a tariff on all of us.
Well, if you follow the White House on social media, they do this thing called the MAGA Minute every week. And what they would point to is the investments that have come in from overseas and onshoring jobs. I think we can show some of those examples as we then turn to your state as well. So also, Oregon's unemployment rate has been steadily rising since June of 2023, and it's outpacing the national rate. Is there a chance that these tariffs could be helping to bring jobs back to your state and, your efforts here are thwarting that?
No, I'm a big fan of facts, and the facts here are incredibly clear that this is not helping. And in fact, more importantly, the president takes an oath to follow the Constitution. The president takes an oath to follow the laws of our land. And Congress has given him some authority for tariffs. And tariffs can be incredibly helpful for the imbalance of power between nations. However, you have to follow those laws. He followed them during his first Trump administration, and he's choosing not to follow them now. And it's incredibly important that there are safeguards for our economy. And what I would tell you, $720+ million less in Oregon for revenue due to tariffs, that impacts schools, that impacts jobs. When you have what I would tell you, products being pulled off of shelves in Canada for Oregon businesses, that impacts jobs. So the real facts here are that this is incredibly harming to all of us. And I would love people to just ask their neighbors, can you afford another $3,800 a year? That's a real question that we should all be asking ourselves.
Well, we know which tax bracket that would impact the most, for sure. Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, joining us now on the Hill, we have Sean Spicer, NewsNation political contributor and host of the Sean Spicer Show podcast, and Chris Cillizza here with me in the studio, a NewsNation contributor. Gentlemen, great to see you today.
Hi.
Hey, I'll start with you since you're right here with me, Chris.
Take that, Spicer. Okay.
All right, let's talk about
well,
about
you know what?
If
I knew you were in town, I would have come in for this. I thought this was Blake.
I would have loved to see you. I would have loved to see you. I have a picture of you holding my son when he was about 6 months old. I'll have to share with you after the show.
I remember that in the green room.
Let's talk about, that's right. Let's talk about taco trade. This is not the acronym that Trump was hoping for. Let's go ahead and roll the tape.
Mr. President, Wall Street analysts have coined a new term called the taco trade. They're saying Trump always chickens out on your tariff threats.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that. You mean because I reduced China from 145% that I set down to 100 and then down to another number? Don't ever say what you said. That's a nasty question.
I promised Chris I'd start with him since he treated me coming into the studio. Is this a hit on Trump's ego or water off a duck's back?
It had clearly annoyed him, right? I mean, he's relatively, as a thin-skinned person, I recognize a thin-skinned person. He's relatively thin-skinned, which, by the way, he has in common with lots of politicians. So yeah, I think it annoyed him. He does the worst thing, the biggest insult Donald Trump can give, and certainly the biggest insult you can say about Donald Trump in his mind is that he's weak or afraid, right? So much of his appeal to voters is that he fights, that he's tough, he doesn't back down, right? That's why the assassination attempt was so critical in affirming that, like, this guy got shot and he got up and said, fight, 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 right? So I think, yes, it clearly annoys him. Do I think in the long run it has any impact? I sort of doubt it. I mean, my guess is Democrats will use it to troll him.
Yeah.
You know, like him in a chicken
Oh,
outfit
right,
and
they
that whole
already
9
are.
yards. But, right.
Yeah, you can
But
hear it
do I think it's going to derail his presidency? No.
Right. All right, Sean, we'll tee it up to you then. Trump always chickens out. It probably doesn't have as nice of a ring to Trump as Make America Great Again does. What's going through his mind right now?
Well, the thing that I find interesting is you can say a lot of things about Donald Trump. I think chicken out is not one of them. He's the guy who took on these countries for the first time. Politicians of both parties have refused to take on not just tariffs and trade and the imbalances that exist, but big, so many of the institutions that we on the right have cared about for a long time. Look at what he's doing at Harvard. I just don't think the moniker fits. It's kind of silly, to be honest with you. And the other thing that's interesting about this entire trade issue is they've already appealed it. So if he was chickening out, they wouldn't have appealed it. And I think that the dirty secret that and I know this sounds a bit wonky, but this is what you get when you're the former assistant U.S. trade rep, is they made a decision early on in this fight to go down the IEPA route, which is the emergency procedures that the Oregon Attorney General was talking about. They knew there would be some legal risks. And what he had referenced at the end of that segment that you did with him is there are trade remedies, which are 131, 232, and 301, which require investigations, take a little bit longer, but that's the investigative power that Congress has given the President of the United States, the executive. I think regardless of how the courts rule on this, he'll pivot to those trade remedies that he has. They kept in place the sectoral things, the autos, the aluminum, the steel, and the bottom line tariff that he is going to keep in place is still there as well. So I think we're losing a little bit of the context. It's not like he stripped all of the things. He's negotiating and he's getting better deals for America. So the context really does matter in this discussion. And I think broad picture, it's not what the simple version that I think a lot of the folks in the media want to give people.
I just wish we had more time to talk about how this is impacting small business owners because the whiplash is killing them. Sean Spicer, thank you so much for joining us. Chris, I'll see you later in the show. Thanks again.
Just make sure you let me know the next time you're in D.C. I'll come in for you.
Sounds good. I'll do it. And I'll send you that picture, too. All right, 12 minutes after the hour, coming up on the Hill, celebration today at Harvard as the class of 2025 walks the stage. But the school's fight with Trump marches on, how the battle over international students is heating up. Plus, taste the rainbow, the major change for Skittles as RFK Jr.'s Maha movement gains steam across the U.S. And he's out of office, but Joe Biden is the talk of Capitol Hill, why the former president is becoming a target for House Republicans. Welcome to Washington. I'm Anna Koyman, filling in for Blake. Today, The Hill is coming right back.
Members of the class of 2025 from down the street, across the country, and around the world. Around the world, just as it should be.
So here's that talking. That was Harvard President Alan Garber today taking a swipe at President Trump during the school's commencement ceremony. He continues to lead Harvard's fight against the Trump administration, and today the university got a victory. A federal judge in Boston extended an order blocking the administration's directive that would strip the school of its ability to admit international students. Yesterday, President Trump proposed a cap of 15% on foreign students. Currently, foreign students make up about 27% of Harvard's student body. Joining us now to talk more, Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. Good evening, Jesse. Great to see you. So let's get right to it. In her ruling, the judge reportedly said she wanted to maintain the status quo. How do you interpret that?
This is just a temporary win for Harvard. This is not a decision on the merits of the case. So really what she's looking for is a more permanent injunction, and she's telling both parties to work on that. But we don't get to the central issues of this case. And I got to say, there are good arguments for both sides. What does Harvard say? Harvard's making the argument that revoking their certification to not allow foreign students, this is arbitrary, so it violates administrative law. They're saying this is a violation of the First Amendment. It's suppressing speech. It's suppressing academic freedom. Whereas what is the Trump administration saying? No, you lost the right. You lost the certification right. You lost the right to have foreign students because you didn't turn over the proper documentation. We were asking about disciplinary records of international students. You didn't turn it over. You did not create a safe environment, an environment on campus free from anti-Semitism. It's those questions that we're not at this stage of answering, but both sides make compelling arguments. But for right now, it's the status quo.
Well, there's so many legal fights going on between these Ivy League schools and the Trump administration. It's enough to make the average Joe's head spin. So what actions are currently pending at Harvard, if you can break it down for us, and which of the Trump administration's actions against Harvard do you think will be successful?
If they want to be successful, if the Trump administration wants to be successful on the merits, they have to prove that they want to revoke this certification based on actual concrete evidence. Say, this is what we asked of Harvard. They didn't turn it over. We are going to show you documented examples of violence on campus, a danger to students, which could be a requirement for someone to have their certification revoked. Now, this is not the only fight that the Trump administration has against Harvard. There's also been an effort to freeze funding as well. That's a separate argument. But I'll tell you, after covering the Trump administration for the last several months, all of these different legal fights, you're seeing a common pattern, or at least a common sense of arguments against the Trump administration, whether it's they don't have the authority to do this, what they're doing is arbitrary, it's not backed up by the evidence, but we're still so much in the early stages of this that we haven't had it fully litigated, let alone fully litigated at the Supreme Court, which potentially this might head down the road.
All right. Well, Jesse, it doesn't seem like it bothers Trump too much. He always kind of just has a twinkle in his eye and just says, I'll see you in court. Appreciate your legal analysis tonight. Great to see you.
You got it. Thanks for having me.
Check him out. He has a top-rated podcast, too. All right. Well, while President Trump dukes it out with Harvard, he's simultaneously championing other alternatives. Trump saying he wants to redirect some $3 billion in grants from Harvard to trade schools across the country.
And I'd rather see that money go to trade schools. And by the way, they're totally anti-Semitic at Harvard, as you know, and some other colleges, too, in all fairness to them.
Well, a new bipartisan bill in Congress is also looking to give these types of schools a real boost. The Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act, as it's called, would allow Americans to use 529 funds, a tax-deferred savings account, for education expenses to pay for training programs. Here now is co-sponsor of that bill, Republican Oklahoma Congressman Kevin Hern. Congressman Hern, great to see you tonight. Thank you.
It's great to be with you.
There are some folks in this country that agree with Trump and feel like these Ivy League colleges, they are woke, they're out of touch. Here's Mike Rowe, the blue-collar advocate himself, though. Here's what he had to say about trade schools.
There's nothing magical about trade schools. I love them, but they're great ones and okay ones and some that fall below, right? You can't just give money to schools any more than you can give it to any random person.
So how would you make sure the cash is being spent wisely?
Well, again, it's taxpayer money that we're talking about. It's either foregoing of taxes or giving dollars directly to these schools. And they've got to have outcomes where people who graduate, many years ago, I went to trade school when I was in high school, learned how to draw blueprints, and helped me pay for my engineering degree. Some 2 years later, paid my way through school, ended up with some student debt that I paid off myself. So these trade schools today, ironically, I just met with a trade school where pipe fitters and welders and electricians train their folks to have, a growing of their experiences. So they do it at night. They work full day shifts, for their plumbing companies or for their pipe fitter companies, and then come and learn how to get better skills. And we've got to see these outcomes. That was obviously a union shop, but we have great trade schools here in Oklahoma, and we've got to make sure that these outcomes are people that are getting great jobs and not just people who are standing up businesses to get funding.
Hey, look, it's a great story. Trade school to pay for your engineering degree, and now you're a congressman. So it's great. The Harvard Crimson found that over 90% of its staff at Harvard donated to Democrats ahead of this past election. So let's dive into this, too. I'd love to hear what you would recommend for your children or your grandchildren if you have either one or will in the future. What's your choice? If they had Harvard on one side and a trade school on the other, both were, going to accept them, which one would you tell them to pick?
Well, again, I've said since I've been in Congress for 6 years, having been in business for almost 40 now, across multiple businesses, all small business, that you need to learn how to have a skill because you never know when industry is going to change, when you're going to have another COVID. and your entire industry that you trained in is being wiped out. Learn a skill, learn how you can get a job that you can make great money, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year coming out of school, no debt, and then you can decide what your future might be. Very few kids, and I say kids that come out of high school, know what they're going to do in 4 years. And that's why we see runaway student debt, only second to mortgages in America. And that's why we saw the Biden administration trying to give away taxpayer dollars to pay off these debts so schools like Harvard and others could raise their tuition even higher.
All right, so let me put a quick point on it. Learn a skill, then go to Harvard, or what do you say?
Learn a skill, go to Harvard. Learn a skill, go to the Naval Academy. Learn a skill, go somewhere, but learn how to make sure you can take care of yourself.
Okay, let's get to this as well. A recent headline from McDonald's. Let's talk about the economy. They just announced that they've had the biggest quarterly drop since the pandemic, and they're pointing to uncertainty from Trump's tariffs. At one point, I understand you owned a couple dozen McDonald's. What do you think this says about consumer confidence when even fast food is floundering?
Well, again, I talk to my former colleagues often, and it's a variety of things. It's, first and foremost, it's that the fact that the inflation is caught up with everyone and the prices are so high, and we've come to a breaking point. America wants to see certainty. Listen, 77.3 million people elected President Trump to go and break what's been happening in America for the last 4 years. Prices out of control, 23% inflation. Their paycheck's not making it like it used to 4 years ago. President Trump run on the narrative that he's going to take care of the blue collar worker. And we just passed the bill out of the House, as you know, last week to send to the Senate to secure the tax policies that are there and make sure that American taxes don't get raised. And that's really important for everybody.
Well, since you sit on the House Ways and Means Committee, we really wanted to talk about the economy with you, too. Congressman Kevin Hern, appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Have a lovely night. Well, there is still much more ahead on the Hill. RFK Jr. says he wants to make America healthy again. We're going to show you how states are taking matters into their own hands. And departing Doge, Elon Musk leaves behind some memorable images, to say the least, as he returns to SpaceX and Tesla. So what's his legacy here in Washington, D.C.? The full panel joins us later to talk about it. And when you're on the go, get NewsNation from Washington as it happens, my friends. Download the Hill app for the latest in politics. More of The Hill coming up right after this. Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome back. I'm Anna Koyman in for Blake Berman. Make America Healthy Again, better known as the MAHA movement, is on the move nationwide. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announcing the CDC is pulling the COVID-19 vaccine recommendation for healthy children and pregnant women. He may also bar federal scientists from publishing in top medical journals such as Lancet, the New England Journal of Medicine, and JAMA, calling them, quote, corrupt. Instead, RFK says he wants to create state-run publications. And for those wanting to taste the rainbow, Skittles has now quietly announced it's removing titanium dioxide from its list of ingredients. The artificial flavoring that made the candy shine will no longer be used. So these changes come 1 week after the Trump administration released the MAHA Commission report, very anticipated, and it's aimed at bolstering the health of our nation's children. But consider this headline from an exclusive report from Notice. The MAHA report cites some studies that don't exist. Well, joining me now at the table, we have Jasmine Wright, a political reporter for Notice, and Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill. Great to have both of you on set tonight, and great to finally meet you in person after doing so many things virtually.
Yes.
But you were there. We were watching you on TV today. Yep. You had a question for the press secretary. Let's go ahead and take a listen, and I'll let you react.
Does the White House have confidence that the information coming from HHS can be trusted?
Yes, we have complete confidence in Secretary Kennedy and his team at HHS. I understand there were some formatting issues with the MAHA report that are being addressed, and the report will be updated, but it does not negate the substance of the report.
All right, so what'd you make of her response?
I mean, just to be clear, when she's talking about formatting issues, what our investigation found is that about 7 of the 522 citations that are in this really blockbuster report that they issued, frankly, don't exist. they're nowhere. We reached out to the authors who said that they didn't write the articles that were being cited. Some of the links didn't work for other citations. And so I think it goes a bit beyond formatting issues. I think it's interesting that they said that they had full confidence in what the HHS and what HHS puts out, including with RFK Jr. But already there have been some questions about what sourcing does HHS, does RFK Jr. Use when putting out some of those controversial statements that he makes on vaccines, on other issues. So this issue does not lend to the credibility of HHS holistically when people are asking how are they getting to the results that are really making massive changes.
Yeah, look, even if the results of the studies are actually out there, it's if nothing else, it's sloppy.
To be clear, a lot of the information they use is valid, but certainly when you're talking about research papers, I think every citation counts.
Yeah, and some say maybe they just hit publish a bit too quickly, but again, you don't want that. So here's what we've got from HHS. They have responded to all this. They say minor citation and formatting errors have been corrected, but the substance of the MAHA report remains the same. A historic and transformative assessment by the federal government to understand the chronic disease epidemic affecting our nation's children. So now I'm going to bring you in on this one because there are plenty of critics on social media of RFK. He's such a firebrand without a doubt. And there's one in particular who says that all of this Make America Healthy Again, MAHA, she says it's a political slogan. It's a Trojan horse. It's actually a front saying they're trying to make Americans healthier when really they're dismantling public health projects that have kept Americans safe. So let's take a listen to her and I'll let you react.
MAHA gave them a front. It allowed them to co-opt real frustration with our for-profit healthcare system, with our broken food environment, and with the state of public health in this country. And instead of telling people the truth that our health outcomes are the result of decades of underinvestment in public health infrastructure, they told a different story. They said it was because of corrupt science.
She's a PhD, an RDN. She says this resembles Soviet Union propaganda. What do you say?
I think that's a completely valid point. And you mentioned in your introduction Mr. Kennedy's desire that scientists would only write for state-approved or government-approved journals, a kind of Pravda of medicine. I think that goes exactly to her point. Her broader point, though, I think is also really important, which is we know there is a crisis of trust generally right now, and we know that that applies particularly in various elements of health, be it about drug companies, be it about the COVID response, etc. It is, of course, valid to be skeptical, but the danger is that it allows bad faith actors or people who are simply cranks to get in there and capitalize on that lack of trust in a way that doesn't add to public health, isn't well founded in the science, and doesn't really have a proper factual base.
Well, I have spoken to MAHA supporters who said quietly that they are concerned that there are aspects that may undermine what they're trying to do. We all want to end chronic disease in this country, particularly for our kids. Jasmine Nile, we'll talk to you in just a bit. Thanks. Appreciate it. All right, well, here's what's coming up on the show. As Secretary Kennedy tries to reshape the health of America, states are also taking matters into their own hands. You're going to want to hear this one. Pennsylvania Republicans are pushing the MAHA agenda through proposed legislation. One bill, for example, would allow schools to offer 2% in whole milk produced within the state. Another would ban schools from purchasing and serving synthetic food dyes in school foods. So far, West Virginia, California, Virginia, and Utah, among others, potentially, have banned synthetic food dyes. Well, joining us now is Pennsylvania State Representative Natalie Mahalik. She is the prime sponsor of the bill titled the Healthy Student Act, which bans food dyes in Pennsylvania public schools. Great to see you. Thank you.
Having me.
So let's go ahead and take a look at this map of the other states with legislation that pushes forward this MAHA agenda. What made you want to take action on this in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, and looking at the map right now, you can see it's sort of all over the place. This is a bipartisan effort. A couple of years ago, I started this well before the MAHA movement became public and widely known, and I was inspired by what they had done in California, passing the nation's first Food Safety Act, and that's really what drove me into action. I was sitting in the state legislature. I had become concerned about these artificial dyes and so many chemicals in my diet and in what I was feeding my children that I thought, oh, I can't wait around for the federal government to take action. We have to do something at the state level. And that's really the impetus for my entire package entitled Healthy PA.
Yeah, because so far, so much of what Maha has done does not, some have criticized and said it doesn't have teeth yet because it's not actual legislation. It's recommendations that Kennedy says Big Food, for example, is on board with the changes. We have seen the Trump administration roll back EPA regulations that will likely allow more toxins in our air, soil, and water, and therefore our food supply. And I know, look, you are concerned about toxins in our food. So are you critical of the Trump administration for this?
So I think that we have a couple of concerns here. Obviously, with the PFAS recommendation that was put into place in the Biden administration and recently rolled back, that's a concern. I'm also concerned that Secretary Kennedy has these wonderful ideas, and he has been a champion for food safety for decades now. My concern there is that he's not going to be equipped with the right amount of resources he needs to actually implement these policies. I mean, the fact is we're being bombarded at every level, whether it's our air, it's our water, it's our food, it's our clothing. There is a cocktail of chemicals that we're faced with every single day and multiple times a day when we're eating all of these things, and sometimes we don't even know what that is. I made this what I think is a handy way of looking at it. It's called the $1 trillion tree, and we're spending all of our healthcare dollars up here, and we're not really addressing what's at the root. And at the root is, just like I said, we're being bombarded with chemicals in our air, in our water, in our food.
Absolutely.
And we're only focused with the diseases on the branches to the tune of $5 trillion. Well,
I'm a health professional
20%
myself, and I agree with you. You know, we've got ultra-processed foods that are a real problem, but the biggest problem is that we all need to be eating more fruits and vegetables, more whole foods. You are a proponent of healthy lunches, but DOGE cuts, they have these healthcare job cuts that we've talked about. They slash programs, too, like those that are facilitating bringing fresh produce into our schools from local farmers. So should the Trump administration have preserved those programs? I mean, look at these headlines here.
Bureaucracy involved when it comes to serving lunch, serving breakfast in public schools. I think that bureaucracy needs to step out of the way. We're getting in our own way of feeding kids. Everybody wants their kids to have a healthy lunch, have access to healthy foods, be educated about these foods while they're in school. And the fact is, we've done a really poor job in this country of promoting that healthy, eating habits early and often when it comes to our primary education in particular.
Yep, it's smart to start with the kids because the behaviors often last a lifetime. Pennsylvania State Representative Natalie Mihalik, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, here's what's coming up on the show. The White House and Republicans zero in on former President Joe Biden.
I think, frankly, the former First Lady should certainly speak up about what she saw in regards to her husband.
The White House questioning who knew what and when about Biden's health while in office. Some Republicans want to take it a step further. Those details when the full panel joins us next.
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
Bill, what am I saying that you don't like?
Everything. America's favorite sparring duo with TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
You were right in your analysis.
Tonight at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
Hello, good evening. Welcome back to The Hill. I'm Anna Koyman, filling in for Blake Berman. Donald Trump will go down in U.S. history as only the second president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms, right? Grover Cleveland was the other. But I'm not sure when Cleveland was in his second term if he was as fixated on his tweener president, Benjamin Harrison, the way Donald Trump's administration has been laser focused on Joe Biden.
I think, frankly, the former First Lady should certainly speak up about what she saw in regards to her husband and when she saw it and what she knew. Because I think anybody looking, again, at the videos and photo evidence of Joe Biden with your own eyes and a little bit of common sense can see this was a clear cover-up.
Republican Senator Ron Johnson is leading an investigation into President Biden's mental state during his term and alleged efforts by the White House to hide Biden's deteriorating health. Separately, the House Oversight Committee, chaired by James Comer, has announced an investigation into President Biden's use of an auto pen to sign documents. A Republican source on the House Oversight Committee tells NewsNation that all 5 of the Biden White House officials with whom the committee requested interviews have complied with those requests so far. An earlier press release from Chairman Comer reading in part this: the cover-up of President Biden's obvious mental decline is a historic scandal. The American people deserve to know when this decline began, how far it progressed, and who was making critical decisions on his behalf. So for President Trump, a candidate who campaigned in 2024 on being the target of a weaponized Justice Department and the target of what he calls a multitude of alleged witch hunts, it brings up some questions tonight. Are these current investigations warranted, or should the Trump administration just move on? We've got the full panel here to weigh in on it. Niall Sanage, White House columnist for The Hill. We have T.W. Arrighi, former communications aide to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, Jasmine Wright, national political reporter for the digital news outlet Notice, and Chris Cillizza, a NewsNation contributor. Great to see everybody. Let's dive right in. T.W., I'll tee up the first one for you. There's reporting that Jill Biden was pulling some of the strings behind the scenes. We all remember that horrible debate debacle, and she escorted him off the set and then said this.
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the
Is he 8? Is he set? How old is he? Should we have seen this coming?
Yeah, you should have seen it coming years ago. And look, the revelations that are coming out are utterly damning. And you brought up history. The press, for years, has overlooked some areas of presidential health that they thought didn't impact their functionality. FDR's, polio, JFK's, Addison's. Heck, Grover Cleveland had nearly half of his upper mouth removed due to cancer. But in 1919, Woodrow Wilson suffered a stroke that made him incapacitated for over a year and a half. And his wife, Edith Wilson, ran the office of the executive. This is what we're seeing here play out. The revelations that there was a Politburo of sorts at play at the White House when the president was having a bad day. The reason these investigations are so important is because we never learned the lessons of Woodrow Wilson. The press said never again would we get duped. Congress said never again and then did nothing. It's time to put in place measures to examine the health of our commander-in-chief, because the American people deserve a duly elected commander-in-chief in charge of his facilities.
And Chris, TW is not the only one making that historical comparison there. So, I mean, what do you think? Does this erode the trust of the American people to the Democratic Party?
First of all, kudos for the Benjamin Harrison mention in the intro. You very rarely get a Benjamin Harrison mention on cable TV. I agree with everything TW said. Look, we have, in a lot of ways, government has become more transparent in the last 25 years. Let's say post-Watergate. In this way, medical records, medical health, we've become much less transparent. I mean, 15 years ago, you know, when John McCain was running, he released thousands of pages of documents about his medical health. We're going backward, and I think that's a problem. To your question about eroding trust, yes. I mean, my view of this, I write about this a lot on my newsletter, and a lot of Democrats are like, move on, who cares?
Of course they'd like to say that. Who won't win?
And my view of it is kind of like, you know, those who fail to understand the past are doomed to repeat it. It's like, this eroded trust with the public. The public, to DW's point, for months and months and months, there was polling that said people think Joe Biden is too old, including 45% of Democrats. I mean, it's not new. And they ignored it. And they ignored it at their own peril. And I feel like they're ignoring it at their own peril again when they see move on. You can't do this. If the shoe was on the other foot and it was Donald Trump's whose health was covered up, I guarantee you they would not be saying move on.
Well, there are some critics, though, that say there's some hypocrisy with these investigations. Now, I'll tee you up with this one. When it comes to these investigations, let's take a trip in the Wayback Machine and roll some tape.
19 minutes into his presidency, they started the impeachment push. 3-year Mueller investigation, 19 lawyers, 40 agents, 500 witnesses, 2,500 subpoenas, $40 million to find nothing.
Will cross a threshold in history, delivering articles of impeachment against the President of the United States for abuse of power.
And we've got Republican lawmakers throwing their weight behind this. We've got Johnson throwing his weight behind the Biden investigations. What do you make of it now?
I think that we get too easily trapped into either-or equations sometimes here. There are valid issues around, for example, Joe Biden's health, or around President Trump's dealings with Ukraine, which was what that first impeachment was about. And the opposition party sees political benefit in airing those as loudly and as frequently as possible. So from the clip we played earlier, for example, does Caroline Leavitt really care what Jill Biden knew about her husband's health? Or is that an easy way to generate headlines, keep that story in the news, keep the focus on a story that is clearly damaging to Democrats and damaging to sections of the media, but also keeps the spotlight off the kind of things that President Trump can be
look over here instead of look over there. I see what you're saying. Let's take a look at this New York Post headline. It points to Senator Elizabeth Warren as a potential controller of that Biden auto pen. So if something nefarious was going on, Jasmine, with this auto pen, who's going to take the fall?
What a tee up. I don't think it will be Elizabeth Warren. I don't think it'll be Elizabeth Warren. I mean, just because David Sachs claims the sky is orange does not make the sky orange. I think that Elizabeth Warren, among other Democrats, are going to have to answer to the public about what they knew about Joe Biden's condition when they saw signs and why they weren't more open and honest with it, particularly when it comes to why did they push him not to run. Certainly those are questions that they're going to have to ask, particularly those senators, not necessarily Elizabeth Warren, who are going to be running in 2026 and 2028. I think that there was always going to be investigations, though. This is kind of the mantra that our country has taken. When one party goes out of power, whether that be in the presidency, whether that be in the House or the Senate, the other party is going to launch investigations. So I think there was always going to be this conclusion. Now, whether it's on his mental acuity, which I think has merit, or other issues, there was always going to be Joe Biden investigations. And I think we're kidding ourselves not to come to that
Which
conclusion.
is why, by the way, Donald Trump wants the House to stay Republican so bad in 2026. Because to Jasmine's point, if Democrats control the House, you can guarantee there is going to be a look into almost everything.
We'll look into Jasmine's point. If Kamala Harris wants to have a political future, she's going to have some tough questions to answer as well. We haven't heard much from her. We're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time. Here's what's coming up on The Hill. Elon's exit. The world's richest man leaves Doge in Washington. So with everything he's done so far, does that make him a hero or a villain? The panel debates it next. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, our Henna Doba is filling in, and she is heading back to Arkansas, where the devil is in the Ozarks is still on the run. We're talking to the fugitive's former boss, who says he is violent and volatile. That's coming up at 7 o'clock Eastern, right here on NewsNation with our Henna Doba. Panel, thank you. Niall, TW, Jasmine, Chris, all of you, thanks for watching at home. Appreciate it. That's going to do it for us tonight on The Hill here on NewsNation. And Elizabeth Vargas Reports starts right now with our Henna Doba.